As right before we're going to hear from Adam Silver, we're first going to lock in with Derek Fisher, as he himself has a lot of experience with the executive side of being in the NBA, as well as some of their global ambitions, as he was one of the ambassadors when they went to the Middle East. He gave great insights to some of the ambitions of the league, as well as them trying to tap into that sovereign money, that endless amount of sovereign money. Like I said, this play is much bigger than just basketball. Some of the countries with deep pockets are trying to rebrand themselves globally, and they're looking for people as well as entities with a lot of cultural cachet that will rebrand the image of their country. You guys check out Derek Fisher as he spoke on some of these dynamics, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I'm not an employee of the NBA, but for the last 2 to 3 years, I've served as one of the senior directors for the basketball portion of the draft combine. And the NBA has these barnstorming trips abroad to grow the game, which is how I ended up in Abu Dhabi making the trip. We had some anxiety, never having been to the region. How are they going to treat women? Do women have to bow their heads, look down, not make eye contact?
That right there is part of the rebranding. Those countries want to change that image, that thought, that first thought in your head. Oh, when I travel there, what if this and that? I heard this and that. They want to change people's thought processes around the world, and they have the deep pockets to make that happen.
You have to wear the traditional garb, but it was a very normal daily experience. In terms of the game and the fans and the people, it was very much like a game at home. Fans with jerseys on of the teams that they love to support. It was the Celtics versus the Nuggets, so there were a lot of Celtics fans there, which was not necessarily easy for me to sit through the whole time. But to me, what stood out was the amount of young people that got a chance to experience NBA basketball. It's not just about bringing a basketball game. There are longer-term visions and plans. There is a strong belief, as evidenced in the United States and other markets, like you can build entire downtown communities around sport. It's a socio-economic growth engine like no other.
Once again, like I said, there's a lot of geopolitics that's into play in this story. And with geopolitics come a lot of money. Make no mistake about that.
The NBA is continuing to test and focus group what NBA basketball would be like in countries outside of the United States. Who are the right partners from a marketing perspective and investment perspective? What is the fan base like? What are people reacting to? Who bought tickets? Who downloaded the NBA app? The NBA is also reminding people or introducing people to why the game of basketball is so special. Basketball represents what America has historically been, right? Like so many men and women, girls and boys on the court from all walks of life. Some that didn't know where they were going to eat when they were 12 years old. Some that were homeless. Some that went to private school. Some that went to public school. It's all universal. And then, of course, the background of guys, best players in the world are from France and Serbia and Slovenia and all these global places. And so little kids in Abu Dhabi can dream to be there one day.
AKA, sports is the perfect marketing tool. Man, and LeBron James and Maverick Carter, they have an opportunity to tap into that. So that's why I alluded to before in the segment, Stephen A. Smith saying NBA ownership is the pinnacle for a guy like LeBron. And when you see dynamics that are playing out globally like this, how does the NBA react when one of their mega stars will have this kind of opportunity? These dynamics have never been presented before. And history has shown us the NBA does not react well to competition. They either try to squeeze you out or they try to buy you out.
It will be important not to build it in a way where it's constantly being compared to the NBA. We don't necessarily need a 20,000 seat arena for an NBA Abu Dhabi, an NBA Africa. Like, create a different experience for fans, create a more intimate environment, be as innovative as possible so the experience is unique, but you still understand it's NBA basketball.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's the beautiful thing. Any NBA exhibition games or even regular season games that are being played out there, it doesn't have to be perfect. The interests are already there. The technology supports it. And the NBA, as well as LeBron James, most importantly, have the cultural cachet that they need. Once again, the Qatar World Cup was proof of concept that you could put on a massive global event in the Middle East and it be successful. So now fast forward into March 27th, just a few weeks later after that All-Star game, Adam Silver sat down and did a presser with one of FIBA's top officials, and they have announced that they're going ahead and doing a European-style league in some of the top cities in Europe, like Berlin, Paris, maybe Madrid. So the NBA is locked in and establishing a relationship with FIBA to not only gain access to certain talents across Europe, but to also establish a foothold down there. And it's going to open up a lot of different doors, because with some of the struggles the NBA is having with the AAU circuit and the youth leagues throughout the United States being so showcase driven, and also with the NIL deals among the college amateur circuit just being kind of all over the place, this may become a new avenue for a lot of youths in the United States who could become professionals starting at the age of 12, 13, 14 years old to start playing for some of these European clubs, even at a youth level. And the reason why I say this might be a great opportunity is because now with the NBA having an association with these European leagues, kids may see a better path forward into getting into the NBA, because now the scouts are going to be more connected, the coaches are going to be more connected. It's almost going to be, in a way, very similar to soccer globally, where players normally get transferred from team to team across the globe. So there's a lot of different dynamics here at play. But just also keep in mind that Maverick Carter just a couple months earlier announced that he and some of the sovereign money in the Middle East was going to formulate their own league. So there's a lot of Cold War games being played. But right here, we're going to check out Adam Silver in the presser along with one of FIBA's top officials and explain how all this culminated together, and also what does this mean going forward. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
So, as you all know, we just concluded 2 days of our Board of Governors meetings, but one of the central topics was opportunities that we've been looking at to continue to develop basketball in Europe. And I'm particularly pleased today, along with my colleague Andreas, to announce that we're ready to go to the next stage, and that is to explore a potential league in Europe with FIBA as our partners. Roughly 15% of the players in the NBA right now are from Europe. 5 out of the last 6 of our MVPs have been European, but there's a huge gap, I think, between the amount of interest in the sport and the development as in terms of how we operate a league here in North America. I mean, it's something that is not a new discussion between the NBA and FIBA. Certainly my predecessor, David Stern, along with your predecessors, Boris Stankovic and Patrick Baumann, had discussions around potential opportunities in Europe literally for decades. But we feel now is the time to move to that next stage. And
for FIBA, the growth of the game internationally is based on 2 pillars: very strong national team competitions and very strong club competitions. And coming out of the most successful World Cup and Olympics ever, we believe it is the right timing that we also take the next step for club basketball. It is certainly looking around the world, of course, here in North America, the NBA is most popular and more commercially successful than ever. This is credit to you, Adam, to your team, and the 30 owners and their teams.
And the NBA is going to bring in some of that commercial success to these European teams. And there's a lot of opportunity for them because, once again, Netflix is looking for content. So are a few of these other streaming platforms that the NBA has collaborated with, like Peacock and Paramount, and even Amazon to a degree. So there's a lot of opportunities. It's almost like the technology just meets them at a perfect timing.
At the same time, we see national leagues, national championships around the world growing very well in a very good pace, both in terms of commercial expansion as well as talent development. Before I get to Europe, you see Japan, you see Australia, you see our joint project in Africa having a significant positive impact on the continent, and several national championships in Europe are doing very, very well. On the international level, meaning we call international the leagues that involve more than one country, clubs from more than one country, we have been running, FIBA has been running competitions for almost 7 decades, since 1957-58 season. And certainly we have seen great product, we have seen great players, but at the same time we have come to the conclusion that the popularity of the sport and the success that we've had with the national team competitions is not matched by a fan interest and a commercial impact commensurate to that success. So it's natural for us as FIBA, having international club competitions as one of the 3 strategic priorities, to discuss with all our stakeholders, and one of our 2 most important ones, it's the NBA.
Interesting. I did not know the NBA was one of their stakeholders. Interesting. But the international competitions, make no mistake about it, it's going to eventually trickle down into the NBA. That's what they really want to do. Imitate sort of a Champions League of basketball. You could have Luka and the Lakers take on a top performing team from Spain. So that'll be like another tournament on top of the in-season tournament, or they might end up getting rid of that and just do club tournaments from different countries, the best of the best, facing off in a 1 or 2 month tournament.
Together with the IOC, the 2 key institutional partners of FIBA. And as Adam said, these are not new discussions. They have been going on. Another element that has helped over the last years, and that is that the NBA is represented on the FIBA board. And I would like to thank Deputy Commissioner and COO Mark Tatum, who's been 11 years now on the FIBA board and on the reduced board, the FIBA executive, and who understands very well our perspective, our primarily developmental perspective for the growth of the game. So I'm also pleased, therefore, to announce that further to the recent FIBA Executive Committee meeting, we have unanimous support to take the next step together with the NBA in the discussions for the creation of such a league.
It's crazy because the NBA has the marketing, the sort of business side on point, the commercialization of the sport. It's A1. But the European side, they don't have that, but they have the development, the skills. That's on point. So I'm wondering if these 2 worlds are ready to collaborate. And when they do, it's actually going to be better for youth sports in America. Somebody with the talent level of LeBron James, or even a guy like Cooper Flagg, they could have been professionals since they was 12, 13 years old, being developed in a league out in Europe, because that same league has NBA connections. So coaches are going to be talking to each other, scouts, everybody's really going to be a phone call away from just kind of almost being interconnected in a way, now that the world is flat, especially with the internet.
It is important for FIBA and its members to emphasize that the plan currently being reviewed, and which we're still exploring, would be compatible with what FIBA and its members, federations and leagues have been doing on the continent, both in terms of connection to the Basketball Champions League and to the national leagues, harmonization with the FIBA calendar, and of course, an extremely important component of this is the support to the development of our members, as well as the ones that we do jointly with the NBA, such as the BWB, the Basketball Without Borders, for the development of players, coaches, and referees in the continent. So thank you, Adam. Thank you also to the Board of Governors, broadening and strengthening what is, and I can tell you coming back from Greece and the IOC session, what is a unique relationship between a North American professional league and an international federation. Thank you.
It's early days, so literally nothing has been agreed upon yet. We're still in the modeling and I would say exploratory stage. One thing, though, we know is important is we want to honor the traditions of European basketball. One, there are some different rules. For example, it's a 40-minute game as opposed to a 48-minute game in the U.S. I think we would play in the current FIBA, but I would say European format. There's strong tradition around the game there. I think stylistically, the game looks a bit different than the NBA game. I think those are all very important aspects to us. I think there's a tradition of open leagues in Europe. For Americans sort of aren't familiar with the concept. We play under what we would call a closed league. We have our 30 NBA teams. There's no potential relegation of teams. I'm sure I'm going to get a question about tanking later. Maybe I wish there was.
Once again, Adam Silver, he loves that Champions League format. He wants the Lakers going up against a top team in Spain or a top team that performs out in France. They've been talking about this for a minute, and it looks like they're starting to execute on that plan.
But in Europe, on the other hand, there's an open system. Now, despite there being an open system, there are certain clubs that are perennially playing in those tournaments or in that club competition. And I think given the opportunity to design a league from scratch, one of the things we're looking at is what are the best elements we can take of both systems. So while I think we want a sense of permanence for some clubs, because from an American standpoint, we would say that incentivizes incentives, whether incentives to build new arenas, incentives to build brands, incentives to build new clubs. That's very important. On the other hand, I love that sense of hope that you see in Europe. And as I said, relegation would solve a lot of our problems. I'm just kidding. But so those are the kinds of things we're exploring. And I just further add, so many changes are happening in media right now. Obviously, in our new media deals, which we're entering into next year, streaming plays a huge part of that. And as I've said before, streaming isn't just a question of taking games that were on traditional media, call it broadcast or cable, and putting them on a streaming service. It affords all kinds of new opportunities to produce games in new and different ways.
Facts. Oh my God, the opportunities are almost endless. I mean, just imagine the next media deal with the NBA having additions globally. So now they introduce a new Champions Cup, where it's multiple teams in France, Germany, Spain that's playing against NBA teams. So that would make their next TV deal even bigger. So it's almost like the NBA now is creating a very similar universe like Grand Theft Auto, like their game online. There's new missions, there's new characters. The possibilities of what that game could be are endless, and the NBA in a way is kind of opening up their own metaverse. Gone are the days of the league just being closed where everyone's just playing 82 games to compete for NBA title in June. Now we're entering a world where the NBA is almost going to become a universe where there's multiple titles on the line. Games are going to be broadcast from different sides of the world. It's going to be available to everybody to see, perhaps on Netflix, on YouTube, etc. So the NBA is definitely headed towards creating their own metaverse.
Maybe becomes particularly relevant in Europe. Multiple languages, dialects, different opportunities. We did talk about our board, incidentally, with this today, and we can talk about that more later. And again, whether that's gaming, yes, betting, consumer sales, user-generated content. So one of the things I'm fascinated in exploring is, to the extent we have the ability to create a league from scratch, how would we do things differently based on 79 years of learning in the NBA and based on decades of learning for FIBA in terms of how they see as the best way to operate a league?
The only other element perhaps that I need to say from a European or international perspective is there is no NCAA.
That is a beautiful thing. When it comes to professional basketball, no NCAA is a beautiful thing. Let them have their own system, but the top of the top, the best of the best, could possibly now go professional at a younger age in a different country. And that will allow a pathway for those top players to actually get into a system where them thinking about getting paid is an afterthought. They're a professional, so everything in accordance to their training, their payments, everything is almost like a job. They don't have to jump through any type of loopholes or deal with boosters, etc. Because with NIL just being so wide open, it's almost like the Wild West. Just anything is going down over there, and they're constantly changing the rules, and they're constantly trying to regulate how much can players actually make. It's a strange dance they're doing over there. It's almost like they want to be considered professional because guys are getting paid, but they want to put amateur restrictions on the players. It's a strange thing.
In Europe, the production of players happens in the clubs, and there is a pyramidal system of sport. And that means that the road of hope, as Adam said, or this dream of developing and playing against the best, is part of our mission as well.
And that's what the American youth players need. The guys in AAU, the top players, they need to go through the clubs, because nothing is based off of the player's age. It's based off of skills. That's why Luka, I believe at age 15 or even 16, 17, he was already playing with players way older than him, because it's really based off of skills. And low-key, the NCAA is watching this movement very closely, because it just becomes another hindrance on them recruiting the very best of the best to get into that circuit.
A small parenthesis, this is what we did also, these two organizations, almost 35 years ago, saying that the best have to play against each other. And I do see an analogy in that, because while we understand the benefits of permanent structures and developing certain markets in a certain way, at the same time, the wider the pyramid is, the better developed the pyramid is. And that means the more clubs we have that are ready to invest in developing players, in winning their national league, in winning the BCL, and getting to the new league, the better it is for global basketball. Why? This morning we had the Eurobasket draw. 24 countries are playing, and that is only the final phase. World Cup, 32 countries play. We cannot limit ourselves in just a few countries. We have here, if I'm not mistaken, more than 60 Europeans playing the NBA, and they are coming from more than 25 countries. So our NCAA is the national championships and the second tier. So the interconnection between the two, this permeability that Adam described, is a big part of how the model could look. Now, in terms of the FIBA rules, I think Adam has covered that, and of course on the commercial aspect as well. This is, I believe, part of the discussions we're having right now. Our role as International Federation is to unite as much as possible the basketball ecosystem. We have tried that in the past, we are trying it now, and we will continue trying it. We're conducting meetings, conducting bilaterals with our stakeholders, including our top clubs. I've tried, and I think I've managed to some extent to convince, especially during the difficult COVID times, that FIBA is here for everyone. And we want our top tier clubs to make more money, to become sustainable, because the majority of them are not, and also to motivate the rest of the ecosystem to play against them and produce players. And during that process of FIBA's basically doing its job, whenever we've called the NBA was there, ready to help, ready to participate in meetings, ready to put its, no doubt, business acumen, but also its very high level know-how of how you run a league and you deal with a different ecosystem. So we will continue on that same path.
So number one, yes, we're looking at the existing arena infrastructure in Europe, although at the same time I'd say part of the opportunity here is to potentially build more state-of-the-art basketball-style arenas in Europe. I mean, that's where we see an opportunity in terms of incentivizing partners, potential team owners, maybe existing clubs to come in, modernize facilities or build new facilities. In addition, we are of course looking at size of cities. Certain European cities, obviously are well known in the United States, are media capitals of industry. Those are things we're looking at. But lastly, I would also say there are some hotbeds of basketball as well in Europe. I think my Greek friend can speak to the enormous enthusiasm about the sport in that country, in particular cities. You know, Southern Europe, tremendous interest in our sport. So I think the factors you mentioned all become very relevant here.
Okay. You can tell they've been collecting data. He says Southern Europe has a huge interest in our sport. Yeah, this is something just like Derek Fisher said earlier in the segment. They've been doing focus groups on this for years.
In order for us to, in essence, green light moving forward on this league, it would not require deals in place, but because there's always risk with any new venture. But it will require us, and Mark Tatum leading those efforts on behalf of the NBA, creating a fully developed business plan, where we have dealt with all potential stakeholders, understand the potential value for these franchises, have a better sense in the media market of what the value of these games would be. As I mentioned earlier, other commercial partners, what their level of interest may be. I mean, at least we have a blueprint in terms of what we do in the NBA. At the same time, also recognize and in part why a partner like FIBA is so important, that there are fundamental differences in European basketball and European sport generally and how fans approach it. And as I said, we're hoping for important that there are fundamental differences in European basketball and European sport generally and how fans approach it. And as I said, we're hoping for a merger of those two worlds. But I think once we're able to concretize a plan in that way, I can't speak for Andreas's board, but in terms of the NBA, we have a committee process. We'd be working with some committees here, but ultimately it would require a vote of our board to move forward. The initial thought is that we would have a 16-team league potentially, and this is still very preliminary, maybe 12 permanent clubs and 4 clubs that would be in a position to play in on a yearly basis. But that's very much subject to change, and that's something we're just digging into now. As to the composition of existing clubs, that's ongoing discussion. I think, one, we want to better test the level of interest of existing clubs. In some cases, what comes with those existing clubs are huge global brands. In some cases, those brands built through global soccer, not basketball, but we recognize there's a tremendous depth of interest in people rooting for those clubs. So that becomes very relevant as well. And then, we also want to test the marketplace. Because I think there, where in virtually every major European city, you have basketball ecosystems, but then the question is, there may be others who, given the opportunity to participate, may raise their hands and say, I would be interested in potentially owning a club in that market, so we want to look at that as well.
So we will continue having conversations with the clubs that play in a national league only, and they're interested, that play in the BCL and they're interested, or they're playing in EuroLeague and they're also interested. So we're going to have a full range of discussions, and I want to be clear about the openness of our position, at least speaking for FIBA right now, on these discussions. And this is very important, that we are having these conversations for our fans and for the development and growth of our sport. This does not mean that this happens to the detriment of other stakeholders. It's actually trying to raise the tide for everyone in European basketball.
One thing I want to add, and for those who are sitting here or watching this and thinking, why all the fanfare around exploration of a league and not the announcement of a league? And in part, it's the response to your question, which is, we want to have very open and direct conversations with existing stakeholders and not have backroom conversations. And it was our feeling, if we announced our intentions, then we could openly discuss with existing stakeholders, existing clubs, what their level of interest is, and the community would know that in terms of the FIBA community as well. And we thought that was a healthier way to go about it. We are not interested in operating a league that has no system of control in terms of competition, in terms of ultimate compensation paid to the players. I mean, we have a salary system in the NBA, but because it's a revenue sharing system with the league, even though it's a capped system, as a function of its revenue sharing, there are enormous rewards for the players. I think likely the highest paid players in the world in any sport. So it's something we're exploring, but FIBA is obviously very helpful there. Lots of lawyers around the NBA, learning European systems, and understanding there's real complexity there, but it may require a different approach than the way we can collectively bargain a salary system in the United States. But still, we would want, I think that's one of the expertise that we bring to the potential new league, a system where every team, regardless of the market size even in Europe, is in a position to compete on as close to a level playing field as possible. In terms of existing NBA owners, there's currently a rule in the NBA that you can only own one basketball club. At least it's our contemplation now that NBA owners would participate as a collective, as owners in the league, but not owners of individual clubs.
We do three things as the world governing body. We organize competitions to generate revenues to develop the sport, but at the same time we regulate a lot of the international activity in the sport. And some of the elements we regulate, especially the cross-country transfers, because if you transfer from one team in the NBA to another team in the NBA, that is under Adam's purview. But if you transfer from the NBA into a FIBA club, that comes under a different purview, and the same if you transfer from one country in Europe to another. We do see there our role, and that's why we're really excited on how the International Federation, with its different roles, can support this potential project, because there is no way in an international setup to put rules in place of that sort that Adam described without the regulatory backing of the international body in order to really have the control that Adam described. So we do have also in that respect, not only a role, but a contribution to make, which will help us have better competition and better grow the sport in Europe.
All right, so there it is. In a way, right now, they're still in the testing phases, going through different parts of those regions where they're seeing if there's enough interest. But the overall structure is there. The commercialization on the NBA side, and as well as the development on the FIBA side, it's going to be a great partnership. But within those crevices, there are a few things left to be answered. As far as, could American players now go professional for some of these clubs that's going to have an affiliation with the NBA in this new league? This could be a brand new path forward for some of the top prospects in the amateur circuit here in the States, for kids to finally go professional at a young age. But these are interesting dynamics globally. There's a lot more breathing room due to the advancements in technology as far as streaming, and also the star power of individual players. A guy like LeBron, and let's say Magic Johnson back in the day when he went out to Sweden, if he has some of the tools that are available today, like Netflix in the Middle East from a geopolitical stance, just trying to market their region in a different light and willing to spend money on sports, as we've seen from the World Cup. So there's a lot of opportunity, not only for the NBA to open up their league, but also for a guy like LeBron James to take all that cachet and mix it in with sovereign money to perhaps form a league that he can put on the global stage. So the possibilities are endless, not only for the leagues, but for the individual entities. But we'll see how it plays out. Until next time, fellas, stay safe. Peace.